used to wake up every morning to the sound of gentle paws padding across the floor. Before I even opened my eyes, I'd feel the soft nudge of a wet nose against my hand, followed by the warm weight of a furry body curling up beside me. That was Puppy's way of saying good morning, not with words but with presence. And somehow, that was always enough. Puppy wasn't just a pet. She was the steady rhythm in the chaos of my days. The keeper of my secrets, the one who stayed beside me when I was too tired, too sad, or too overwhelmed to speak. She had this way of looking at me, not like a human looks at another human, searching for meaning, but like she already understood everything. Her eyes didn't judge. They simply saw me. When she passed, everything became too quiet. The house, once full of tiny noises, the click of her nails on the kitchen tile, the jingle of her collar, the way she huffed in her sleep, now echoed with absence. Her bed remained untouched for weeks. Her leash hung by the door like a question no one could answer. Every corner of the house reminded me of her and what I had lost. People told me I should get another dog. "It'll help," they said. "It'll make you feel better." But I couldn't. I wasn't ready. The idea felt wrong, like betrayal. Puppy wasn't just a chapter in my life. She was the book. How could I just replace her? So I did nothing. I let the silence grow. Grief is a strange thing. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It slips into your coffee routine, into the way you hesitate at the pet aisle, into the empty spot at your feet where someone used to rest. And over time you don't cry as often, but the ache doesn't leave. It settles in like an old friend. I convinced myself I was okay, that the hole in my heart would stay there, permanent, that some loves once lost don't get replaced. And maybe that's true, but then one day something shifted. I wasn't looking for love again. I wasn't even looking for a dog. But sometimes love finds you when you're least ready and most in need. And that's when I met Moxxi. It was a Thursday afternoon like any other. I had just stepped away from my desk to grab a coffee at the small cafe tucked into the corner of our company's lobby, the kind of place with mismatched mugs and warm lighting, a comforting little pause in the middle of corporate monotony. I wasn't expecting anything to change that day. I ordered my usual, a flat white with a hint of cinnamon, and leaned against the counter while waiting. That's when I noticed the commotion by the community bulletin board. A small circle of people gathered, some kneeling, others laughing softly. I was curious, but not enough to move, until I heard it. A single bark, sharp, excited, tiny, turned. There she was. This miniature whirlwind of fur, caramel-colored, ears too big for her head, and eyes full of electricity. She was tangled in the leash of a very flustered HR intern, who clearly wasn't prepared to be a dog handler for the day. The little dog wriggled with the kind of energy that made everyone smile. She was chaos in a 4-pound package. I couldn't help but step closer. "She's part of our new pet therapy program," the intern explained breathlessly, struggling to keep the leash from wrapping around his legs. "They're bringing rescue dogs in for employees to hang out with during breaks. She's called Moxxi." Moxxi, the name suited her. Full of mischief, full of life. I crouched down slowly, instinctively, and in a blink she barreled straight into my arms like she'd been waiting all day just for me. I felt the warmth of her tiny body against my chest, the soft weight of her head under my chin. I inhaled. She smelled like puppy shampoo and sunshine. I should have smiled, but instead my throat tightened. Puppy used to fit in my arms like that. Puppy used to run to me like that, and just like that, the ache returned. Sharp, sudden, uninvited. I stood quickly and handed Moxxi back, mumbling something about a meeting I was late for. I wasn't. I just needed air. I needed distance. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she looked at me, not curious, not hesitant, just expectant, as if she already knew me, as if she had been waiting. I told myself it was nothing, just a cute dog, just a moment. But I avoided the cafe the next day, just in case. On Monday morning, she was back. This time, she wasn't bouncing around. She was curled in a little donut on a fleece blanket behind the espresso machine, her leash clipped to the leg of a chair. Her eyes were half closed, but the moment I approached, she perked up. She stood, stretched, and walked right over, like she remembered me, like she had been waiting. The intern, now more experienced, grinned. "You can take her for a walk if you want, or just hang out. She's been kinda calm today." I hesitated. Everything in me said no, said it was too soon, that I wasn't ready, that getting close to another dog was a betrayal, that Puppy's memory deserved more space, more time. But there was another voice too, softer, quieter, one that asked, what if this isn't about replacing her? What if this is about healing? I sat on the floor beside Moxxi. She didn't jump. She didn't lick. She just leaned into me. And somehow that was all I needed. Later that day, I found myself emailing the HR coordinator. Would it be possible for me to volunteer to care for Moxxi during lunch breaks? They replied within, "Duitsu." Absolutely. In fact, would you be willing to take her home for a night? We're short on fosters this week. I stared at the screen. Take her home. I hadn't let another dog inside my house since Puppy. Her toys still sat untouched in a box. Her leash was still by the door. Her memory was everywhere. And yet, I typed back, "Yes, I'll take her tonight." That evening, I brought Moxxi home. I watched her explore the living room, sniffing corners and wagging her tail at invisible things. I watched her find Puppy's old blanket, still folded on the armchair, and curl up on it like she belonged there. I didn't cry. Instead, I just sat across from her and whispered, "Okay, just one night." But in my heart, I already knew. This wasn't just one night. This was the beginning of something. Night one with Moxxi was quieter than I expected. She didn't bark. She didn't pace. She simply nestled into the corner of the couch like it was where she'd always been. Occasionally, she'd glance up to check if I was still there, then go back to her gentle breathing. I sat across from her, watching. There was a strange comfort in her stillness. Not the calm of a tired dog, but the peace of something, or someone, who feels safe. And somehow that safety became mutual. That night, I didn't dream of Puppy. Not in the way I usually did, reliving her last day, or the empty drive. Home from the vet. Instead, I dreamt of Moxxi chasing butterflies in the backyard. I woke up with her curled against the back of my knees, soft and silent. It was the first peaceful night I'd had in months. The next morning, I found myself packing. Her a little go bag before work, treats, a collapsible water bowl, her favorite squeaky toy from the night before. My husband, who had kept his distance since Puppy's passing, watched me from the hallway. "You're smiling," he said quietly. I paused. I was. A soft, unsure smile, but a real one. "I'm just helping her for a few days," I said, more to myself than to him. He nodded. "Sure, a few days." At the office, Moxxi became an unofficial mascot. She trotted beside me as I moved between meetings, her leash looped around my wrist. During lunch, she snoozed under my desk, occasionally letting out tiny sighs that made my coworkers melt. Even my manager stopped by just to say hello, but it wasn't just her presence that mattered. It was what her presence did to me. I was softer, more open. I caught myself humming while writing emails, smiling when no one was around. There was less heaviness in my chest, more air in the room. On the second day, I took her to the vet for her routine shots. The receptionist handed me the clipboard and asked, "Are you the adopter?" I hesitated. "I'm fostering her right now," I said. The vet tech smiled. "Well, whoever gets her will be lucky." That evening, as I buckled her back into the car, I realized something. I didn't want someone else to get her. When we got home, she ran straight to the couch, leapt up without hesitation, and pawed. at the blanket until it was just the way she liked. Then she waited, looking at me, tail gently thumping. I joined her. My husband sat across from us, sipping tea. He raised an eyebrow. "She's got you," he said. "She's just visiting," replied. He smirked. On day 3, everything shifted. The rescue coordinator called during my lunch break. "Hey, just checking in. Moxxi's next on the adoption list. There's a family scheduled to meet her tomorrow if you're not planning to keep her." The words hit like cold water. Keep her. The phrase echoed in my head all afternoon. I stared at her, across the office floor, curled up on her little dog bed, breathing in that slow, steady rhythm. Could I? Was I ready? Would Puppy understand? That night I opened the box of Puppy's toys. I had kept everything. Her collar, her squeaky fox, the rope she used to tug until we both collapsed laughing. I pulled each item out gently, laying them on the floor in front of Moxxi. She sniffed them one by one, respectful, curious but careful. Then she chose the fox, the same toy Puppy used to fall asleep with, and brought it over to the couch. She didn't chew it. She just held it. Softly. I took a deep breath. Maybe this wasn't about replacing anyone. Maybe it was about remembering and continuing. That night I sent the email's subject line, Moxxi. Body. I'd like to adopt her. The confirmation came the next morning. She's yours, officially. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, phone in hand, blinking back tears. Moxxi sat at my feet, waiting patiently. I knelt down, pulled her into my arms, and whispered, "You're home now." She didn't wiggle. She didn't bark. She just pressed her little head against my chest and sighed. There's something almost imperceptible about healing. You don't notice it happening in real time. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or grand revelations. It arrives quietly, in tiny moments, in quiet mornings, in the soft thump, the tail on the floor. With Moxxi, it started with laughter. I hadn't laughed, truly laughed, since Puppy passed. But one morning, I found myself doubled over in the hallway, watching Moxxi attempt to conquer the staircase like it was Everest. She barked at each step, huffed dramatically, then scrambled upward with a triumphant hop. At the top, she turned back and looked at me like, "Did you see that?" And I couldn't help it. I laughed, loudly, freely. She wagged her tail so hard her whole body wobbled. That small, ridiculous moment cracked something open inside me. And once the crack appeared, the light started pouring in. Our days settled into a rhythm. Moxxi had her spots. The sunbeam in the living room at 10 a.m., the corner of the couch that gave her a view of both the TV and the front door, the foot of the bed where she curled up every night without fail. She was small, but her presence filled every inch of space. I found myself talking to her, not just in passing, but like a friend. I told her about my day, my stress, my memories of Puppy. She'd tilt her head, ears perked, as if listening with full attention. And maybe she didn't understand the words, but she understood me. One evening I sat on the floor brushing her fur while the rain tapped gently on the windows. Without thinking, I whispered, "I didn't know I could love again." Moxxi looked up at me. Not in response, just in acknowledgement. That was enough. Love, I was learning, doesn't diminish when it grows. It expands. It stretches to make room. And Moxxi wasn't erasing Puppy's memory. She was building beside it. She was stitching joy into spaces I thought would stay broken. There were still hard days, like the first time I walked by the park, where Puppy and I used to play. I froze at the gate, my chest tightening. Moxxi sat beside me, sensing the shift. She didn't pull forward or try to distract me. She just sat, still, grounded. I knelt beside her and cried, letting the grief wash over me. She didn't move until I did. That was her gift. She didn't try to fix anything, she just stayed. Grief had made me fragile. Moxxi made me brave again. Over time, small moments turned into milestones. The first time I took her to a pet store and didn't tear up in the treat aisle. The first time I let myself frame a photo of her beside one of Puppy. The first time I caught myself singing while making breakfast. Something I hadn't done since the silence began. Each of those tiny victories felt monumental. Not because they erased the past, but because they honored it while making room for the present. My husband, who had kept a gentle emotional distance out of respect for my grief, started bonding with Moxxi too. One night I walked into the living room to find him lying on the rug, her favorite squeaky fox in hand, playing tug-of-war with her like a kid. "She's got a strong grip for a little thing." He grinned. "She's stronger than she looks," I said, watching them with a full heart. So was I, it turned out. One weekend we drove out to the countryside, just the three of us. I hadn't been able to take road trips since Puppy died. The idea of leaving home, of leaving behind her memory, had always felt like a betrayal. But now, it felt like a continuation. Moxxi sat in her booster seat, wind ruffling her ears, eyes wide with wonder. At one point she let out a soft boof at a passing cow, and then buried her head in my lap like she'd just performed a heroic act. I kissed her forehead. "You're doing great, kiddo." We arrived at a small cabin tucked between pine trees. There we hiked short trails, picnicked by a stream, and sat by the fire wrapped in blankets. Moxxi curled between us, snoring softly. That night, under a sky full of stars, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living again. Not because I'd moved on from the loss, but because I'd learned to carry it with me, not as a weight, but as a companion. Puppy had taught me how to love deeply. Moxxi was teaching me how to heal bravely. And in the quiet, in the soft rustle of leaves and the warmth of her tiny body beside mine, I whispered something I hadn't said in a long time. I'm happy. Not perfectly, not without ache, but genuinely. And sometimes that's more than enough. Grief and love are twin flames. They burn with the same intensity, often indistinguishable at their core. One exists because of the other. I hadn't understood that, not fully, until Moxxi came into my life. In the weeks after adopting her, I found myself thinking not only about the present, but about the journey that had brought me here. The long nights after Puppy passed, the guilt, the refusal to open my heart again. I had believed for so long that grief was sacred ground, and to step outside it was to dishonor the one I lost. But I see it differently now. Grief isn't a prison, it's a garden. And in that garden, love still grows. Puppy taught me what it meant to be seen completely and unconditionally. She was there for first jobs, breakups, new homes, old doubts. Her presence was constant, a heartbeat in my shadow. When she left, it felt like the entire framework of my life had collapsed. Everything felt unfamiliar, unsafe. I kept thinking, no one will ever love me like she did. And I was right. Moxxi didn't come into my life to replace Puppy. She came with her own rhythm, her own quirks, her own brand of chaos. She hated peanut butter, which still baffles me, and loved watching the laundry spin in the dryer. She had this habit of nudging her nose into the crook of my elbow when I was sad, like she was trying to remind me, I'm here, right now. And that matters. She wasn't a second chapter. She was a parallel story, a different book entirely, and both deserved their place on the shelf. One day, while organizing photos for a family album, I came across a picture of Puppy lying in the sun, eyes half closed, her face serene. I stopped and stared. Next to me, Moxxi was sleeping on the rug, snoring softly. I placed the two images, one living, one frozen in time, side by side, and something clicked. It wasn't about choosing between them. It never had been. Love isn't a limited resource. It's not a candle that burns out with each loss. It's more like a flame passed from one lantern to the next. Different vessels, same light. Opening my heart to Moxxi didn't extinguish my love for Puppy. If anything, it kept that love alive, made it fuller, more resilient. Because love, real love, doesn't disappear when someone is gone. It transforms. It stretches into memories, into habits, into the quiet ways we carry them with us. I still talk to Puppy sometimes, not in sadness but in gratitude. "Look what you taught me," I whisper. "Look who you helped me find." There's a misconception that moving on means forgetting. But healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means allowing joy and pain to sit beside each other at the same table. It means recognizing that love can come again, and that it's okay to say yes to it. Even now, when I take Moxxi on walks, I sometimes feel Puppy walking with us. Not in a ghostly, mystical way, but in the rhythm of our steps, in the pause we always take by the lilac bush she loved to sniff. Grief never fully leaves, but neither does love. Moxxi has become more than just a companion. She's a reminder. A living, breathing, tail-wagging lesson that life doesn't end at heartbreak, that the soul can crack open and grow back stronger. That healing often comes not in grand gestures, but in 1,000 small choices, like saying yes to a dog who needed a home, and realizing she was healing yours in return. There are still moments, quiet, fleeting, when I miss Puppy so much it catches in my throat, but I don't fear those moments anymore. I welcome them because they remind me that I loved deeply and was loved in return, and that is something worth remembering, worth honoring, worth continuing. People sometimes ask me if I'll ever love another dog as much as I loved Puppy. My answer? I already do. Just differently, and that's the lesson I never saw coming. Love doesn't have to look the same to be just as real. It doesn't have to replace, it can coexist, it can expand. And sometimes it arrives in the form of a tiny creature with oversized ears, an unshakable spirit, and a heart big enough to help carry your broken one tiny paw print at a time. Sometimes the most extraordinary chapters of our lives begin in the most ordinary moments, not with grand declarations or dramatic turning points, but with a glance across a coffee shop, the weight of a tiny dog in your arms, a quiet whisper, "Maybe I'm ready." With Moxxi, it was never about forgetting Puppy. It was about remembering her differently, with softness, with space, with the understanding that the human heart, though fragile, is never truly full. There's always room for more love, more laughter, more life. Now every day with Moxxi feels like a gift I didn't know I needed. She doesn't fix everything. She doesn't erase the past. But she's a daily reminder that healing is possible. That joy can return. That sometimes, when you think the story has ended, life hands you a new page, blank but full of promise. We've settled into a rhythm now, she and I. Morning walks where she chases leaves like they're personal enemies. Afternoons spent with her curled under my desk as I type, her breathing steady as punctuation. Evenings with her tiny head resting on my lap, a quiet presence in the chaos of the world. And though I know there will be hard days ahead, as there always are in life, I also know this: I'm not walking through them alone. Moxxi found me when I wasn't looking, loved me when I wasn't sure I could love again. She didn't come to fill a void, she came to light a path. A new chapter has begun, one filled with muddy paws, shared snacks, and the kind of quiet understanding that only a dog can give. But our story isn't over yet. In fact, it's only just beginning. Because while this chapter may have started with a goodbye, it continues. With every new hello, every wag, every walk, every unexpected joy. And who knows what tomorrow holds. There are more memories to make, more lessons to learn, and more tiny paw prints to follow. So stay with us, because in the next part of our journey, Moxxi and I will discover just how far love and healing can go. And I promise it's a story worth hearing.